Yeah, you are the boss.
Okay. So, thank you everybody for being here. Thanks for those who are attending in the room. My name is David Esteban. I'm going to be the chair of this keynote speaker session. It's going to be my pleasure. So, I will introduce our keynote speaker for this session. Alfonso Molina has an extensive and recognized experience in technological and social innovation, both at the academia as personal chair of technology strategy at the University of Edinburgh in the UK, where he worked for almost 3 decades, and later on in a more hands-on approach as co-creator and scientific director of the Fondazione Mondo Digitale in Italy. It, it's about theory and practice combined, and I think I will repeat that many times today. Alfonso has carried out extensive theoretical and practical work focused on the development of an environment integrating academic theories, instruments of practical application, and projects on a variety of themes: technological and social innovation, multi-sectorial clusters for territorial development, and ICT-based educational innovation, among many others. Research themes of particular interest for Alfonso include multi-sectorial hybridity in social innovation, knowledge-oriented nonprofit organizations, education for life in the 21st century, personal ecosystems, and self-entrepreneurship. This could be just for another entire session, I say. Startup accelerators and inclusive self-entrepreneurship accelerators. For the Fondazione Mondo Digitale, Alfonso has ideated, among other initiatives, the Innovation Gym, which is an environment for education for life in the 21st century, and the National Network of Innovation Gyms, which is composed already of over 120 schools so far. As already said before, it's about theory and practice, combined in an integral and innovative approach. Alfonso has collaborated as an advisor and expert consultant with the European Commission, the UK government, and many European cities. He has authored books, papers, reports, and models, and lastly has published the book Education for Life in Digital and Digital Inclusion, which was published by Ericsson in 2016. Today, in our sessions, he will discuss about tackling the challenge of 21st century education through an integral program of education for life, the case of the Fondazione Mondo Digitale in Italy. This holistic and flexible approach of the Education for Life program supports educational players in the understanding and practice of systemic educational innovation. In practice, the program is an integrated set of innovative aspects that simultaneously an approach to systemic innovation in the school world. The presentation will give an overview of the Education for Life in the 21st Century program of the Fondazione Mondo Digitale, illustrating its reason and content. It addresses briefly the contextual aspects characterized by the continuous scientific, technological, and socio-economic changes and their consequent impact on companies, jobs, and school education in terms of tools, environments, and pedagogical offer. The presentation, if the time allows, will also include an example of a project focused on combating educational poverty. So I just remember all participants in this session to turn off, muted, your microphone and your video. So welcome, Alfonso. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for this presentation. I will share my screen now, and so we can proceed with the presentation. Okay. Okay, you see the presentation well?
Yeah, perfectly well. Thank you.
Okay. The theme, as David has said, is tackling the challenge of 21st century education through an integral program of education for life, the case of the Fondazione Mondo Digitale. This is quite an extensive program, so I will try to be concise with each slide because there's quite a breadth in the presentation. This is the agenda. First, the challenge of 21st century education, then we enter into the world of complexity through great acceleration in science and technology, great acceleration in society, what's happening in education, and the educational approach of the Fondazione Mondo Digitale that contains 4 elements. So you can see the presentation is quite clearly separated in 2 main streams. So let's go for the challenge of 21st century education. And I always use the words of the late Ken Robinson about the aims of education are to enable students to understand the world around them and the talents within them so that they can become fulfilled individuals and active, compassionate citizens. Okay, this is obviously a tall order, basically because to arrive to the objective of fulfilled individuals and active, compassionate citizens is really a long journey. And exactly, I think it connects very well with the journey towards self-actualization, which has been identified in the pyramid of needs of Abraham Maslow. At the top, you see self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. I share the view that education should contribute to help people to reach these levels of fulfillment, human fulfillment in their lives. But if we enter and we try to unpack the element of this journey, we see that on the one hand, we need to understand the world in which we are traveling, because at the end of the day, this is the territory of the journey. Wait a minute. Okay, it's the territory of the journey. And as travelers, we need to understand who we are, what equipment we have with us, what we lack, etc. So the metaphor of the journey has the territory and has the traveler of this century. I must say that when I said of this century, in the case of Italy, this is in a sense quite real. The life expectancy today in Italy is about 84 years. So for a member of the Generation Z born in 2010, this is just about reaching the end of the century without taking into account any other improvement in medicine or including the area of genetics. So the journey in, being throughout the century must provide us the school system with some education that prepare us for well, to face issues like how will the world be in 2050? Who can say at the levels of speed that we are progressing? How it will be at the year 2100? Okay, it's almost impossible to say. So education can no longer look at something that is evolving gradually with a lot of stability in the careers. Education must prepare us to face tremendous challenges at high speed. Okay, let's see, and let's enter into the territory of complexity, our complex world, with a great acceleration in science and technology. Probably you, coming from the world of computing, will know much of it from the first part. So we'll go quickly. What we have here is that In 1971, the microprocessor was created, and it had 2,300 transistors. Almost 50 years later, only 5 decades, we are with microprocessors that are reaching, and I think you probably have surpassed already, 40 billion transistors. So that gives an idea of the scale of miniaturization and the scale of the speed of computing power. And what interests me here is not that much the statistics about the number of transistors, but the ethical and evolutionary implications of this type of development, because this is what is central for education. And we have the phenomenon of singularity that you may know well, that has been developed by Ray Kurzweil, although the word comes from the 1950s. And Kurzweil is concerned with the power of computing, computing performance at $1,000. And because obviously, if the computing performance is very, very expensive, as are today's supercomputers, it will be difficult for a massive diffusion in society, and therefore for singularity. He is saying that already for 2020, we would have reached non-biological computing, would have reached the level of biological computing of one human brain, which is estimated to be 10 to the power of 16 in the number of calculations per second. But what is most important for singularity is that the power, the combined power of non-biological intelligence overcomes the biological power of all human brains together, which will be, according to Kurzweil, the dates, I don't think they are very, really important. I mean, 10 years more, 10 years less is not the point. No? The point is the trend towards a moment when non-biological computing, the power of non-biological computing combined at $1,000 will overcome the combined power of all human brains. And if we think about 2050, the population will be about 9.5 billion. So what Kurzweil is saying, that by the end of, let's say around 2075, the computing power in terms of calculation per second at the cost of $1,000 will reach something like 10 to the power of 30. Okay, this is the moment in which humanity is supposed not to be able to control the development of technology, particularly because technology will continue to develop at a higher speed, while human brains develop very quickly, as it does the growth of the population. So this element of singularity has very important implications for the evolution of humanity. And this is an issue that we, I think, should be very clear and should be already part of education, so that youngster begins to prepare for this type of development. Then, okay, this type of developments can lead to an evolution, which is basically from the monkey towards a new type of I don't know, it's a cyborg, no? That's the idea. The first cyborg is Neil Harbison, who implanted, he was colorblind, and he implanted an antenna connected to his brain. And this antenna translates colors into sound waves. So he can envision, and he can envision at a greater range than normal human beings, no? Neil Harbison has been, I think, recognized as officially as the first cyber, but we know that elements of progress everywhere with exoskeletons, the ability to control wheelchairs and other devices through the brain. And it's all part of the merger of computing power and artificial intelligence with humans. Another area, I'm jumping many areas that you will know, like quantum computing, etc. Artificial intelligence is another area with a very strong ethical and evolutionary implications. So we know that artificial intelligence is very good for recognition. So face recognition, gesture recognition, voice recognitions, emotion recognitions, translation machines, and the deep fake, which is basically the reproduction, the digital reproduction of people that you can make people talk about anything you wish. All these certainly has major ethical implications. And I think youngsters growing up today should be completely aware of all this, apart from all the areas of fake news and so many phenomena that we are living in the world of internet, and that comes under the generic name of responsible citizenship. We also have neuroscience that is entering the realm of the brain with the functional MRI scanner, and it's we are developing more and more accurate pictures of the activities of the brain when we do certain activities, and more. I think in the course of the decades we will begin to understand also the relationships that exist between the 100 billion neuron that we have inside the brain, and of course the trillion of connections that we have among the 100 million neuron. This is another technology, an electroencephalogram. This is a cap to monitor brain activity. More controversial, in a sense, is the Elon Musk Neuralink brain interface, which opened up a hole in the skull to introduce a brain chip implant. And this is the actual machine that the Neuralink uses. It's a kind of sewing machine with a helmet to carry out this operation. It has not been tried yet in any human, but in August 2020, Neuralink implanted the brain chip on a pig. So we are slowly or rapidly progressing in many directions. All this is leading to something that, on the one hand, like most things, will have very important results for medicine. So the mind reading, for instance, this is an article of New Scientist. Mind reading AI turned thoughts into words using a brain implant. And artificial intelligence can accurately translate thought into sentences, at least for a limited vocabulary of 250 words. Result, the system may bring us a step closer to restoring speech to people who have lost the ability because of paralysis. So this is let's say the uncontestable side of all this development. More worrying, at least for me, the US military is trying to read minds. A new DARPA research program is developing brain-computer interfaces that could control swarms of drones operating at the speed of thought. What if it succeeds? Yeah, that's a good question. What if it succeeds? Because the question has at the moment, one can imagine hundreds of answers, being the military involved in it. And the important thing from the point of view of education is that youngsters should be already aware of that these developments are taking place as many others. If we go into genetics, we see that ICT has penetrated at full speed the world of genetics. genetics. So if you look at this exponentiality here, what you see is the evolution of genome sequencing, with the blue line referring to speed, and the red line referring to cost. So you can see how the speed of sequencing, measuring kilobases per day, has gone in 1996 from about 10 to 1 billion, no, in less than 10 years. On the other hand, the cost, which initially was about 1 million of sequencing a genome, measured in terms of megabases, from 1 million in 95 or so, right down to $1 almost. It means that all of us will have the human genome sequence, I think, in a shorter period of time than imagined. This is the cost of the human genome. The sequencing of the human genome, when it started the project, it was about 100 million. And in this graph that arrived to 2014 is about 10,000. Now is about, I think, 1,000. So what we have here, no? In 1953, it was discovered the double helix, no? And already we have the human genome has been sequenced, but we also have in 2013, so we are talking here a period of 60 years only, and from the double helix, you know, we are modifying all sorts of life, including human life, in particular with a genetic modification technique, CRISPR-Cas9. But all these techniques continue their very fast development. So what Edward Wilson, philosopher, biologist, talked is that we have entered a stage of volitive evolution, which in a more popular way is like humans are beginning to play God. We are entering, modifying all sorts of plants, all sorts of animals through the techniques of genetic modification. Here you have some examples of a genetically modified cow in Belgium. The argument is that they give 40% more meat. Then you have muscular pigs in China, muscular dogs also in China. Almost all animals by now have been genetically modified. As you can see, here you have phosphorescent rabbits, phosphorescent medusa, cat, fishes, monkeys, etc. So genetic modification is rampant already in the world of animals. And obviously, we couldn't be we couldn't be left out. Initially, the idea was that we should be left out, at least from the point of view of the germline. The germline is that genetic modification that becomes hereditary, therefore is passed from one generation to another. That single step changes the entire course of human evolution as we have known it today. Millions of 4.5 millions of years from the first hominoid, 200,000 years. This is the estimation for the emergence of Homo sapiens in Africa. And evolution has been, in a sense, spontaneous. Now we are into the realm of volitive evolution, and we have, as MIT Technology Review put it, we can now engineer the human race. Okay, again, this is baby Einstein, very, very nice. The main issue, again, is that the progress is happening in medicine, and as it happens in medicine, there are terrible genetic diseases. Nobody could contest. I think the ethics of those developments. But the germline has already been crossed. This was a huge scandal in 2018 when a Chinese researcher, Ha Jiankui, basically modified two twins, Lulu and Nana. They had their genes modified before birth by a Chinese scientific team using the new editing tool CRISPR. The goal was to make the girls immune to infection to HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. The issue is that there are other techniques to tackle the issues of HIV. So there's a lot of suspicion that he just wanted to be the first, demonstrating once again that humanity, if it can be done, it will be done. But because it's very difficult, we don't know yet. We know the human genome, but we don't know yet the relationships. There are 3 billion pairs of letters of the alphabet of life inside any chromosome, and the relationships between them is not known. And this is something that will bring the merger, I think, of artificial intelligence and genetics, and that's already progressing. There were side effects. Fortunately, the side effects seem to have been positive in the sense that they have enhanced the twins' ability to learn and form memories. But this is the issue of human enhancement. And this is where there is a major ethical debate and discussion, because medicine is okay, but to begin to enhance people's abilities to learn and memories and the body asking for a specific type of height or color of eyes, and all this arrive to human enhancement. And one can imagine if this human enhancement were to be mediated by the market, the type of humanity that we will find ourselves in the next decades toward the end of this century. Okay, the scandal that worldwide scandal that Ha Jiankui created also was, in a sense, taken in China, and he was trial secretly, and the news was that he faced 3 years in prison for CRISPR babies. There's also a news that there was another CRISPR baby being born in China. Okay, this is, if you like, elements of a great industrial, the great implications, no? Great implications for science and technology, great implications for our lives, for the way in which we're going to live life in the 21st century. So this is the territory that education must create self-awareness, in the youngsters which are growing today. If we pass from technological developments, with the ethical and evolutionary implications, we also arrive, to the creative destruction in the industrial world. And here we find enormous volatility. This is a graph that shows the anticipated lifetime on the ranking of Standard & Poor 500. And what you can see here, the acceleration of creative destructions, is that in the 1920s, the average tenure of a company on the Standard & Poor was anticipated to be 65 years. By the 1990s, it was down to 10 years. Even the best-run corporations are unable to sustain market-beating levels of performance for more than 10 to 15 years. So you can see, in a sense, the world of competitions and volatility, unpredictability in the world of industry, but all that translate, here we have another digital disruption is at the heart of all this. This is the Fortune 500. They were from the Fortune 500 firms in 1955. In 2017, remain only 60. So there was a real massacre of firms of the Fortune 500. The reason, new digital business models are the principal reason why just over half of the names of companies on the Fortune 500 have disappeared since the year 2000. So we are talking 20 years, and about 250 of the companies have disappeared. And digital disruption for the future will wipe out 40% of, in other words, 200 companies of the Fortune 500 firms in the next 10 years. So this is the speed, volatility, and complexity that is living. Obviously, this has an impact on the work situation. And what we can see here is the work. In 2002, work that low digital skills was 56%. 14 years later, this has gone down to 30%. So it's almost half. Instead, high digital skills has gone from 5% to 23%, and medium digital skills from 40% to 48%. In the course of this century, almost all work will be subject to digitalization. The impact of this, well, okay, there are many graphs relating to automation and the use of robotics. I have just taken this one to illustrate the jobs at risk of automation. And this is a graph that The Economist has created, where we have on the one hand the income of people, GDP per person, and on the other the jobs at risk of automation as percentage of total jobs. And what you see here is that the countries that have a lower GDP per person, let's say to a point of 42 or 3 thousand, 42 or 43,000 per capita, have the greatest number of countries with jobs at high risk of automation. Instead, I mean, all those that go from over 43,000 to 70,000, okay, much higher income, much higher GDP per person, are more protected because they have a lower percentage of total jobs at risk of automation. The fact is that nobody really knows the actual numbers of job losses and job gains, but definitely is going to be quite a change in the content of jobs all over the world. The reason is that this graph shows, as you can see here, all the routine-based jobs, in other words, the jobs that are codified, understood. This is routine physical. This is routine service that until a few years ago, the white collar works was growing up. Now it has also begun to go down. Mining and this type of categories and routine resources is almost down to zero in terms of jobs because of automation. And what we have is that only, in the red line, only the creativity-oriented jobs are really growing up. This doesn't mean that these jobs are all ICT or computing of high skills. There are many jobs here that are related to caring, related to community development, jobs which may not be of very highly paid, but that have a high element of creativity, in particular because they concern working with people. But it's not only technical knowledge, that is changing through ICT, robotics. There are also the issues of soft skills. And this is a graph that shows a survey of CEO who were asked about skills which were important and hard to find. What it finds is that at the top here are the soft skills that were highest in demand, but also difficult to find, like problem solving, creativity, innovation, leadership, and adaptability were identified as the battleground of skills. Closer comes also issues of emotional intelligence. Collaboration is pretty high, but it's not difficult to find. So education must take into account all these developments, because if we are going to prepare youngsters, and in fact everybody, for life in the 21st century, meaning many decades, this is the way things are going. And we have, at the same time, not just the fact that we need to prepare for certain skills, but in society we know from the studies of Gallup that is at the moment a lot of disengagement or dissatisfaction with the job situation. And you can see that Gallup, and quite consistently from 2000 to 2016, it's just about less than 1/3 of the workforce of the United States, about 100 million people. Less than 1/3 is actually engaged. This is people who enjoy going to work every day. Then you have about 50% of the workforce is disengaged. So this is people who go to work because they have a salary and they need to pay their bills, and the job helps to do that. But it's not something that really engages them. It's not something that is related to fulfillment. And in the end, we have about 16%, 20, 15, etc. This amount of people who are actively disengaged. So these are people who basically boycott their work actively. So what we see, from the point of view of not just the changes which are taking place, but also the entire job situation must be revised to be able to increase the fulfillment of people in their jobs, which is a large part of their lives. Sorry, just a quick shot to a couple of things. Okay, we know here another big problem, plastic in the sea. Okay, we have seen the fires all over, the glaciers that are disappearing. Just to remind that we also face huge problems with the environment, as it's just been discussed. Then wealth inequality. Okay, this is Oxfam reminding us that by the year 2015, the top 1% of income earners of the population have overcome the bottom 99%. This is another huge issue, which is very much at the level of the crisis that the system, the capitalist system, the neoliberal system is living today. So we arrive to education. In the middle of all these elements of a complex territory of life, what's happening in education? Okay, I will just give a few elements, because this is also a massive topic. And if we begin by taking an impression of what is a systemic approach to education, because in the end, we are in the process of changing education systemically. That means that we need to take account of the content of education, the learning instruments, environments, and programs of education, the management of didactic processes and the school, the training of teachers, head of schools, etc., governance and educational policies, and a range of systemic innovations. All of these will be transformed systemically during this century. I'm going just to concentrate into learning environments, learning instrument environment and programs, just to give you maybe an idea that what you know already about what's going on in this area alone. And inside here, well, we see that all this is changing only in this dimension. The instruments are changing quite dramatically, including the classroom, the place and time where education happens is changing, who learns and with whom is changing, diverse roles and relationships are emerging inside the education. There are many diverse modalities of learning. And of course, schools and national educational programs are changing. I will just touch briefly on these three that you see in red. So instruments, you can see that if we just take instrument of communication, collaboration, productivity, and evaluation, well, you have Skype, Hangout, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Dropbox, Google Doc, etc. No, if you have knowledge objects and activity, the choice is enormous. The books, e-books, games, apps, video, webinars, physical and virtual lessons. Then we have outer school projects, community expeditions, global challenges, internships. All this is now part of the world of education, but obviously applied very patchy in different schools. If we go to open knowledge sites, we know Khan Academy, edX, Coursera, etc. We have a variety of learning management systems, Moodle, Edmodo, etc. Social bookmarking, Simbaloo, Diigo, Pinterest. Then we have equipment. And here there's a huge amount of hardware and software and labs. So we have scientific equipment, computer, tablet, whiteboard, 3D printers, robot, virtual reality, etc. This takes us to a variety of type of courses, which can be physical, online, blended. Now with the pandemics, we have seen quite a lot of online, and we are beginning to move to, I think, back to physical again, but I think blended will remain. So we have MOOCs, simulators, and obviously artificial intelligence with adaptive learning. And the classroom is changing. So we have still a lot the traditional classroom, but we also have flipped classroom, tilt classroom, and blended classrooms. So here we have just a few pictures of new classroom, learning spaces, school and national programs. So it's a tilt classroom. Technology-enabled active learning comes from the MIT. And what you see here is a lot of screens around the class, computers and in the round tables, panel controls, and at the same time, these tables are equipped with scientific equipment. This has been developed for a course in physics and has shown that it has improved the performance of a student quite substantially. So that's just an example of a class. Here you have another class where all types of learning modalities are happening in an effort of personalization, because this is obviously teach to one, so personalization. So you have a lecture here, you have peer-to-peer work here, you have a small group collaboration, independent practice, virtual tutoring here, virtual instruction here, live investigation. Anyway, what you see is that different modalities of learning can be combined depending on the needs of students. And this is an important step toward the dream of personalization or individualization of learning of each student. Then, as you know, there are many learning spaces like Fab Lab. This is one from Amsterdam. Then we have all over co-working spaces, even co-living spaces where people live together in a budget accommodation, but they have mentoring, legal, financial, and lifestyle solutions, and social innovation, which is more related to social innovations in the community. New schools, okay, here a couple of examples. The primary school in the Fuji won an OECD award, no, in Japan. Then you have the Vitro school in Svezia, basically no classroom. The kids are organized by topics and projects, and they work wherever they like inside the school, while the teachers keep track of where they are. Just one example of a national program in Hong Kong, the Life-Wide Learning Program, refer to students learning in real context and authentic settings. So you have the school environment with the critical subjects in intellectual development, then physical and aesthetic development, moral and civic education, community services, and career-related experience. So it's much more experiential, and therefore the entire society becomes part of the learning environment. That's the life-wide, you know. So you can work with mass media, government, non-local context, natural environment, religious organizations, social services, you name it. Everything that's in the environment may become part of the school program. And this is argued provide experiential opportunity that helps students achieve the aim of whole person development. So here we are on the track to the fulfillment, the self-actualization, whole person development, and enables them to develop lifelong learning capabilities. With all this, it's not strange that the role of the teacher and the student acquire many manifestations. So if we take the student, a student can be lecturee, tutoree, peer tutor, peer evaluation. These are all roles that the students in different schools can play. They may be responsible citizens, some volunteers, team players, team builders, leaders, co-designers, artists, sport persons, writers, artisans, communicators, problem solvers, researchers, innovators, self-directed learning, something very important in personalization, and other life roles. No, so the entire world is available for students, and therefore there are an enormous set of roles that can be played to enrich education. Instead, teachers are lecturers, tutors, are facilitators, mentors, coach, counselors. This is the type of it's no longer just the person who transmits knowledge. It's more, no, the leader of an orchestra can play all these roles: learning program designer, producer, administrator, evaluator, researcher, innovator. And it's all this, no, in a context of life and lifelong and life-wide learner. So we can see, no, the world of education is already in quite a I wouldn't say turmoil, but in quite a change. But it's very patchy. No, some countries are well ahead, like Hong Kong or Malaysia or Finland. Others are well behind. So the situation is extremely, as I said, patchy, and requires a massive investment if, let's say, the development of objectives of 2030 are going to be reached in their minimal expression. Okay, this was the first part of the presentation. Now I enter into the part of what is it that we are doing inside this environment to prepare students, no, for the life journey. We have a program that has evolved over the years, and we know, no, we start from the fact that the territory is complexity. I'm using here also the VUCA world, which is an acronym that developed by the US Army. And VUCA means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So the territory, this is the territory, and the youngsters need to be prepared for this, as we have just seen some details of what it means, no, to be in this territory. So we have seen this, no, a little bit. Obviously, it's a huge area, but I've given you a taste of what it means, the territory. Now, there is a huge area when we look at the traveler, no, ourselves. We are the travelers of the 21st century, and we need, to understand more about who we are, how are we equipped, and how can we become better equipped through education. So this is the two elements which I will deal now very quickly. This is just the type of education that we think is absolutely important, and a new education for open thinking, attitudes, and behavior. Okay, here are the key words, curiosity, research, knowledge, skills, relationships with the community, love of learning, initiative, collaboration, happenstance, which are learning to manage or to create fortuitous encounters that can change your life. And all this requires to discover in the journey the motivation, determination, aspirations, passion. The journey of education is about finding this. It's about defining your values, attitude, and become, as we have seen during the pandemics, a great requirement for resilience and even better anti-fragility. We at the foundation have encapsulated all these words into one single word, which is self-entrepreneurship. In other words, in brief, we believe that education should equip youngsters to become entrepreneurs of themselves. Let me enter into this territory. So our program of education for life, what I'm presenting you here, has this element, the theory of self-entrepreneurship and some tools that make it operational. The model of education for life in the 21st century, which is basically an integrative model, a space that we have created called the Innovation Gym for digital and other type of competences, and the Inclusive Accelerator, which is a program that we run inside the Innovation Gym. Okay, let's see self-entrepreneurship and personal ecosystem. What is a personal ecosystem and why it's important? An education for life, and this is our statement, should contribute to equip people to become entrepreneurs of themselves, self-entrepreneurs in the journey toward the full realization of their life in the 21st century, the journey towards self-fulfillment and self-actualization. Now, for us, this means, what does it mean, is the question. This means to nurture in people the capacities to construct, innovate, and reconstruct personal ecosystems, leading to the realization of their lives in interaction with others and in the exercise of a responsible citizenship. Okay, what is a personal ecosystem then? It is the system of everything that influences me. I mean, this is extremely complex. Huh? It is the system of everything that influences me, making me what I am and what I want or do not want to be. It shapes the concept I have of myself, the self-concept, and also, obviously, how I see myself in terms of my own identity and positioning in society. In short, I am the outcome of the personal ecosystem. A little bit more of detail, a personal ecosystem is multidimensional, dynamic, evolving, complex system containing the internal and external, local and global aspect influence the life of a person. It is a micro ecosystem, a subject of the macro ecosystem of society, again, local and global, that is in constant change and may or may not lead to the realization of the person. a relationship of mutual influence exists between the personal micro ecosystems and the social macro ecosystems. Okay, I have differentiated to be able to make this operational 7 spheres, no? In what could be a personal ecosystem. The first sphere, I normally say that no, the personal sphere, sphere of the self, although we know that the self is the result of all the spheres, is I normally say it is us naked, no, mind and body. Everything that we carry with us, mind and body, is part of the personal sphere. And these include areas of knowledge, areas of experience, areas of attitude, of values, areas of fears, areas of the shadow and the biases. There are many dimensions to this area, very complex, because we are probably, you know, at least as far as we know, the most complex entity or creature in the universe. The second layer that begin to interact immediately with us in the sense of what we can be, you know, what we are, is possessions. But possessions is not just what I have as property. It's also all those things, material or immaterial, that I have a secure access. No, so just to give an example. No, this is a smartphone. If I have a smartphone, my development benefits from access to the entire world of internet and a huge amount of knowledge and even possibilities of business and economy. A person who hasn't got a smartphone in a poor country, in a poor village, quite clearly, has completely blocked its progress, or at least its progress towards self-fulfillment will be much poorer than that of a person that has a smartphone. Then we have a key area, which is the area of relationships. A study of Harvard, 80-year study of a group of people demonstrated that along the course of life, there is one type of relationships that is the key to happiness. At the beginning of the study, many people will say, "Okay, I want to be famous. I want to be rich." But in the end, is the deep relations, the friendships, the relations that you can trust, the relation that you can be free, with the other people, are the element that is most fulfilling for happiness in life. But we also know that relationships are of many types. So in the past, already in the 90s, there were articles about weak relationships. And now we could probably talk about weakest relationships. If we look at the friendships, in Facebook or in LinkedIn and the likes, all these are very fleeting relations. But in a sense, they give a piece of information that if you wanted to contact a person, it may become an important element of your personal ecosystem. But relation is absolutely key. But relationships normally happens also inside organizations. So if we are students, our school becomes very important. If we work in a company, obviously the culture of the company is absolutely crucial for the harmony, for the fulfillment, the alignment between who I am and what is it that the organization is giving me as an environment for life and work. If I am a free spirit that want to be very creative, it's highly unlikely that the company, which is hierarchical, is going to provide me with the environment which is self-fulfilling. So the fourth element is organization. Then we have the fifth and sixth. This is the places where I live, my village or my city. And it's not just about infrastructures of transport and communication or ports. It is also about the market structures. It is also about the legal structures that operate in the environment in which I live and work. And then we have culture. And culture is normally, and often hidden. It's not written in the regulations of a place, It's hidden in the customary behavior of people. So here, if we have, let's say, a city where meritocracy is really a fundamental part of culture, quite clearly, in education and in work, issues become more clear, and if I am good at it, I am expected to proceed through my merit. In a place where you have a lot of nepotism and corruption, the possibilities of doing that is much more difficult. So this is also another important element that affect quite clearly my possibilities of self-fulfillment. And eventually we arrive to the global forces and trends. Here, just it's enough to mention what we have seen before in the environment. We all know that every year now we are breaking records, in terms of temperature, in terms of disasters, and there is a lot of movements are trying to fight what's going on with global warming, and so many expressions of that phenomenon, including the sea, plastic sea, etc. This is, during this summer, quite clearly in Rome, I felt that I was being directly touched by this type of trends, this type of events, and they were creating quite a lot of discomfort in what is the journey of my life. Okay, this is the personal ecosystem. We have created a canvas that we call PEC, or Personal Ecosystem Canvas. This is one dimension. I can exemplify because this is a tool for self-assessment. So here I provide examples of what is one dimension of the internal sphere, basic knowledge, required by the 21st century skills programs. So here I give basically examples of subjects of basic knowledge. So the persons who are doing the self-assessment, they can choose from here and put here the knowledge types that they want to assess. They can put 3, 4, or okay. Here there is an important number, and they don't need to put the ones which are in the example of basic knowledge. They can put also their own. What matters is that they are self-evaluating, and then they can give an assessment of the state of development of that knowledge type by giving a marking, and this is for the current situation, so today. At the same time, you can choose a number of years, 1, 2, 3, when you would like to see a desired change. So you can then draw a graph, and this will show you the areas where maybe you don't need any development because you are happy with it, or areas where you need quite a lot of development work if you really want to improve to what you have marked as your target for the future. Okay, that was the personal ecosystem, a personal ecosystem canvas. Now, our model of education for life in the 21st century is very integrative, and we start many concepts. These are all well-known concepts. So we start with the person-centered And the person is not just the student, it's also the teachers, and presumably all the personnel of the school. And more people are talking about the educating community. But the key persons will be, for me, obviously, the student, who must receive the benefit of an education for the journey of life, and the teachers who must prepare to give that kind of education. Then we identify 3 types of knowledge that we try to introduce in our own projects. So the 3 broad types of content: standardized disciplinary knowledge, which is from the world of schools and universities today. But we know, as we have seen, that they are in transformation. So here, there's a lot of innovation happen. Then, as we have seen, there is a request for life skills for the 21st century. So that's another major element. And we think that for the changes and the ethical and to deal ethically with the evolutionary aspects of this century, values and attitude for a responsible citizenship becomes fundamental. Then we have 3 broad types of learning: lifelong learning, known for almost 30 years now, absolutely clear with all the constant changes that we're living through. Life-wide learning, we have seen it applied already in Hong Kong. This is learning in all ambits of life. To our right, to life deep, transformative learning. And this is the learning that I was mentioning about open attitude and knowledge and behavior. So people basically must become entrepreneurs of themselves, much more active in the build-up of their lives. And that's the reason why we have seen the personal ecosystem. Then in the learning spaces, okay, we have seen life-wide learning, no? The school, the class, the lab, the home, nature, cities, villages, companies, fab lab, co-working. We have seen many of these elements, and these are part of an education that enable us now to transform the world into a learning environment. And we adapt with so many learning approaches. I can see that they are emerging almost every day. Somebody invent a new name. So we have things that constructivist, constructionist, experiential, project-based, phenomenon-based. In 2016, Finland has introduced an extremely interesting module in their education, and it's called phenomenon-based, which is multidisciplinary, and this means that teachers must work in teams, but it's also related to phenomena which may have global implications. Okay, brain-based learning, self-directed, autonomous, authentic, service and challenge-based learning. This is all a lot to do also with social innovation, like a service learning, to improve the community. Obviously, a major issue with adaptive learning in artificial intelligence, personalized, individualized, blah, blah. Okay, these are all, there are so many of them that this is just a taste of how many learning approaches are emerging all the time. And this is just, the entire holistic approach seen in one slide. So this is our education for life model. To realize the education for life model and implement also the personal ecosystem, we have created an environment that we call Innovation Gym. It is an orientation environment for education for life and self-entrepreneurship. So what it is, the Innovation Gym? And we also use very much the word virtual because we consider a strategic element, the integration, the physical and the virtual. That's the reason why we have called our Innovation Gym here, the Foundation Virtual Innovation Gym. So what it is a physical virtual environment for innovation and education for life. a gym for the experiential learning and practice of innovation at 360 degrees, technological, social, and civic innovation. And this is because we see education through innovation, innovation through education. A space open to the territory, the school world, industry, academia, the civic society that has young people as its person core. The important element here, as we are implanting these spaces inside the schools, is that the innovation gym is the place where the walls of the school fall and the schools open itself to the territory and the community and also obviously the world. Finally, it's a place where inventing and constructing means inventing and constructing oneself. Discovering means discovering oneself. Creating and innovating means creating and innovating oneself, and ultimately becoming an entrepreneur of oneself, which has been our objective encapsulated in the word self-entrepreneurship. Okay, here you have the spaces that we have in our innovation gym here in Rome. Now we are building 3 more. I will show you later. But our space, our innovation gym, facilities for co-working, multifunctional. So we have a Fab Lab that follows all the recommendations of the Center for Bit and Atoms of the MIT. We have a game lab for interactive video gaming. Everything is digital. We have activity spaces for leadership and team building and strategy making, using, for instance, the Lego Serious Play and other tools like 2Bs. We have a real a virtual reality lab, an immersive lab, and a video lab for 3D animation and special effects, and all that enable us to do digital arts. And we have created a digital art festival, coding lab, which is very requested, robotics lab, Internet of Things, Internet of Everything. As you can see, as another picture of Fab Lab, as you can see, it's an environment for the digital languages, for digital competences. But our innovation gym is not just digital competences, because we are about self-entrepreneurship. So let me just first give you an example of activities that we have done, educational programs at the innovation gym. So we have a
Sorry, Alfonso.
Yeah.
We are 15 minutes before the end of the session, so you can keep some minutes also for questions. That would be appreciated.
Okay, we have at the moment. What time is it?
It's 15 minutes before the end of the session.
Okay, so I will take, as I said, as I was told, 1 hour 20. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, so here you have spaces for kids, spaces for youth, work with Google, spaces for robotics, spaces for gender, technological gender divide, spaces where youngsters teach digital skill to old people, and youngsters and people get together and team building to work doing social innovation in the community, program dedicated to teachers, program dedicated to families. And as you can see, this is a very rich set of activities. In our accelerator, we have a blending between the courses of personal ecosystem through a project ecosystem, and the youngsters move between these two, but we are the accelerator ecosystem. We are the service ecosystem by providing all the environment for the youngsters to move forward with the program of self-entrepreneurship. So we find the coaches, the mentors, and here we have all the digital area and the self-entrepreneurship area. You have seen personal project ecosystem, problem solving, leadership, innovation, and a variety of innovation approaches for our self-entrepreneurship competences. So this is the full program that we develop, and the 6-month program, we offer people digital environments, coaching, co-working spaces. They can come from 9:30 to 2 whenever they want. Mentoring, event and networking, and demo days, where they pitch their result and prototypes to to a jury. Very quickly, I will tell you that we are creating 3 other innovation gyms with the idea of inside the schools in disadvantaged area, trying to tackle education for life, territorial community development, reduction of educational poverty, and inequality reduction. We start with the innovation gym inside the school. We expand to territorial ecosystems. We transform social innovation or education through social innovation in the territories, and social innovation through education, developing digital competences, self-entrepreneurship competence, sustainability competence, and knowledge, all these to create a job orientation and university orientation program that eventually also operate with contamination towards the schools, inside the schools, for innovation in the curriculums. This is just an expression of how the innovation gym inside the school expand to schools, business, university, territorial. So the ecosystem, then, because there are several innovation gyms and several ecosystems, they will all be linked together through a virtual environment. And we have eventually a network that is not just Rome, but it's also Milano, Bari, Palermo, Reggio Calabria, and we hope that we will arrive to the whole of Italy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alfonso. Sorry for interrupting you before. You did perfectly well, just on time. Now we have time for some questions, which I guess you are going to be having from the audience. You already have a number of questions in the chat, but Vadim, is there any question in the audience, in the conference room, from those attending physically this session?
Are there any questions from the audience immediately? You have a question? Just a second, and I'm bringing the mic. That's fine. You're very sweet.
So it's not like a question. First of all, I'd like to say that, of course, it's a very controversial question about ethically about use of artificial intelligence from ethical point of view. Of course, I could agree with you. And I would like to clarify some points. Your report name is like lifelong learning, but I didn't catch the idea. In all this innovation gym and all other laboratories, they are for all people of any age, or just for students?
Could you summarize me a little bit? The question at the end is whether the program that we are developing is just for students or for any age?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you saw from, we have a priority of working with the schools. From primaries to technical institutes, we are carrying programs that we have about 50 projects, no? And these programs are sometimes people come here, let's say, full classes with a teacher, and they do Fab Lab, or they do 3D animation, or they do a longer period of work in our premises. But we also, most of our activity actually happens inside the schools, because we have a network of trainers around the university, and many of these programs are implemented in the schools by trainers that go there to teachers. And we also, during the pandemics, obviously we went entirely online. So most of the activities we did, for instance, for schools, trying to teach teachers how to learn platforms and many other things, were happening online. But our foundation worked in the work of school, but also worked with disadvantaged sectors at risk of exclusion. And here I'm talking about older people, immigrants, refugees, unemployed people. Now we have a program with sick people. And all these carry a content of education. No? So for instance, the program for the sick people, the last one, is about emotional intelligence and empathy with sick people. And this was an entire program for open to everybody, youngsters and older people, teachers, parents, and it also involved universities providing the scientific background of the illnesses, but also the association of ill people explaining the support operation. So we like to think that our programs, in one way or another, touch a wide range of humanity.
Thank you. That is a microphone.
So, yep, I was muted. Sorry. Thanks for answering. Some of the questions we have in the chat were already addressed in your talk, I think, because probably we anticipated to part of what you have been introducing, like the impacts of artificial intelligence in labor market. I think you answered that in your presentation already. So let me combine the two next one, which is one is that there's a huge gap. So you show an impressive progress in technology in very few decades, while we know that introducing them in education is in its infancy, actually, and very patchy, as you say. So one question was: is there a way to accelerate this adoption? And if we combine this with the next one about governance, which in education is entirely different than in the rest of the world. I mean, how to put together the acceleration and the adoption with the governance.
Okay, I mean, governance is absolutely, to start with that one, is absolutely fundamental, no? Because if in a school, you know that there is a lot of, okay, there are two approaches, no? Government may decide that a change is going to take place, and there is a governance of a well-structured educational system where part of the governance is the authority of the government, the authority of the teachers, and that facilitates the introduction of a change. But it should not be just a top-down. So it's not just because you have authority, you say, okay, tomorrow you are all going to do this. There is a process at the same time generated that may take 1 year, 2 years. In Hong Kong, for instance, after Great Britain left Hong Kong, they started a consultation with all the school world to design the new program. And this took about 3 years of involvement of everybody, making their contributions about what type of education they would like, for the post-colonial era. So, on the one hand, the authority of the players, how well the players see each other, and a well-structured process can work wonders. If you move to other places, where the authority of the ministries, everything is very patchy, there is no communication, there is conflict with trade unions because trade unions feel that the teachers are not well paid. So anything is contested once you throw out. consultations are just basically mock exercises. You throw a question, okay, you have 1 week to answer this question to all the teachers. And then you have inside each school, schools have the problem, at least in the case of Italy and other places I know, that they don't compete. They don't compete in the market. So there is no innovator die pressure inside the school. So it's a much slower process of persuasion. And inside, if you take the curve of Rogers, of the diffusion of innovation, where you have the innovator and you have the first followers and you have the first majority, and that reached 50%, that's quite a process that needs to be managed. If you don't manage that process and you think that you're going to arrive with, let's say, a complex tool, and everybody's going to start using it, I mean, you are dead. If you introduce a new pen, okay, that's fine, because it's a very incremental innovation. But if you are going to introduce the type of approaches that we're talking here, let's say artificial intelligence and this type of things, it requires this process of maturing, contamination, a sense of the process of innovation, so that you can create the leadership conditions. And obviously, the rector or the president of the school need to have a very clear idea of leadership, which is not a leadership which is authoritarian, is what is called today servant leadership, distributed leadership. So there are many, many elements in trying to understand and how to take forward processes of innovation inside schools.
We have quite a number of questions still, but no time. Just one question that we have in the chat also is, do you take into account geopolitical issues? The global division of labor is related to strategic flows. The issues you discuss are closely related to this, including global leadership. Is this something that how this is has been incorporated into the model and the approach that you have been developing in Mondo Digitale?
The issues of geopolitics?
Geopolitical issues, yes.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this is an area which, well, I arrived just in time with my hour and 10 minutes. Geopolitics is a huge issue, starting with the European Union. Inside the European Union, we have a massive problem of creating Europe, and trying to move, if you like, to the complex world. There's always the argument that Europe is a leading light, in terms of their social and moral views to lead the world. Unfortunately, that may be true from inside Europe. But around the world, it's a geopolitical issue. Nobody recognizes that. Then, if you move to the battle that's going on now between China and the United States, I mean, all the battle for supremacy in quantum computing, all that has an enormous implication, because here we're talking about geopolitical issues that involve areas like democracy. How do you want to live your life? Because you can be absolutely efficient in stopping the pandemics that emerge in your country, but it worries me the fact that China is a country that has never known democracy. So the geopolitical issues are really very, very rich, and maybe some of the greatest impact today is the environmental issue. When everybody's saying to China, okay, you to India, you are greatest polluters now. Yeah, but you have been the greatest polluters in the past. So why shouldn't I geopolitically develop my country? Geopolitics is everything.
Okay, thank you very much, Alfonso. I think we have arrived up to the end of this session. We'll have more time. I would like to, first of all, thanks all the attendants and those who have been connected online and in presence. Thank you, Alfonso, for the time, the interest in this conference, but above all, for all you have been doing up to now. And I would like to, I think I should be giving a message that you have been putting in your presentation, that what has been done in Fondazione Mondo Digitale is not a locked, isolated experience. It's an open experience and knowledge. I think it's there. It could be shared and it could be expanded. It could be scaled. So you are very open to cooperation. And I think Ukraine, with quite a lot of activity in this domain, could eventually be interested. So I think it has been good to be both sides in contact.
Absolutely. I mean, we got to take into account that most of our activities are for free because we search for money. We are a project-based organization, so we look for money with companies. We work with Google, Facebook, Microsoft, European projects. So wherever there is the possibility of a project, we go there to try to get money to be able to be free to the world of schools and all the disadvantaged people. We are very open to share.
Okay, so invitation taken, I guess. So that's all from my side. Vadim, is there anything you would like also to add? Otherwise, we'll be closing the session.
I am happy to thank you also from on behalf of the people who are physically present here in the room. So the only thing we can do for you, just at the very least, to give you an applause. Thank you very much. That was an enlightening talk, and I truly appreciate your dedication and being ready to donate to the communities and the societies. Good to get acquainted with you. Thanks.
I think this has been a wonderful cooperative collaboration. Thanks, Alfonso, for joining us. Thanks for sharing and for offering. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so the session is closed. Thanks everybody for having been with us. Let's keep with the conference then.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.